All right, so moving on to the final segment, we're going to pivot here to the world of football inside the NFL world. And I'll be sharing my thoughts on where I do believe that the top name free agents will land this NFL free agency. So I have 10 names for you guys. The biggest 10 names I do believe that's on the market for free agency in the next upcoming weeks. Now, first player I'm going to mention is franchise tag, but I do believe something is going to be in the air for this particular player. And that is wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, T. Higgins. Now, like I just said, T. Higgins has been tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals, so he is not a free agent. But I do believe that T. Higgins could be on the move because this would not surprise me if it's a tag and trade move because T. Higgins has been tagged twice, back-to-back years by the Cincinnati Bengals. And he wasn't happy last year when he got tagged. He actually requested a trade out of Cincinnati when he got traded last year, and I don't think he's happy about being tagged again. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, they have a tall order in front of them because, yes, they locked up Joe Burrow, their franchise quarterback, but the Bengals still got to find a way to pay Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Hendrickson, three massive players, a part of the Cincinnati Bengals roster, to long-term deals. That is a tall order to ask for. And the fact that this hasn't happened yet makes me think maybe, or they could get 2 out of 3 of them to long-term contracts, with T. Higgins being the one out of Cincinnati, for them to revamp their defense to get a better offensive line as well. But again, this is a hot take. But if it's a tag and trade move, look out for the following teams to get T. Higgins. Buffalo Bills would love to have T. Higgins playing alongside Josh Allen, that Buffalo Bills offense. Jacksonville Jaguars, I think they could use the services of him at the wide receiver position, playing alongside Brian Thomas Jr., a young wide receiver out there in Jacksonville. Or the New England Patriots. I know the New England Patriots said they weren't all in getting T. Higgins this NFL free agency, but never say never. They got the cap space, and that would be a perfect number one option for Drake May, who is entering his sophomore season this upcoming NFL season. So, again, a sign and trade is not something I'm ruling out for T. Higgins. I'm following this situation, but T. Higgins is not a free agent. He has been tagged by the Bengals, but be on the lookout if they move off of him. Now, next player on my list is Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold is going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Vikings have already announced that they will not franchise tag Sam Darnold, and they are going to let Sam Darnold hit the market, which I would let Sam Darnold walk. Now, you guys call me crazy based on the numbers that he put up, but we're talking about Sam Darnold that you got to put up a massive price for him at this particular point. When he showed me when he showed me what he could do in games that matter the most. You go back to that Week 18 game against the Detroit Lions where the number 1 seed was on the line in the NFC and the NFC North was on the line. He wet the bed, had a bad performance. Then you go to the next week when they played the Los Angeles Rams. Wet the bed and had a bad performance. And we're talking about two defenses that weren't elite defenses last year. Played well all year long in regular season games, but that Week 18 game to me was like basically a practice playoff game. And in the wild card, you had a terrible performance against the Rams. So I don't think that Sam Darnold is worth the money. I would go with J.J. McCarthy next year, and you take it from there. Because now you basically don't have to pay for a quarterback. But Sam Darnold going to the Pittsburgh Steelers makes sense because he can play under Arthur Smith's offense. Arthur Smith likes to have his quarterbacks under center a lot. That's what he did with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. And that's what he did with Russell Wilson a lot this previous NFL season. So Sam Darnold of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I could see that because for some odd reason they refuse to go after a quarterback of the future and draft one. They have not drafted one since Kenny Pickett. But Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are free agents this NFL free agency. And Sam Darnold, to some Pittsburgh Steelers fans, would be nice to have. But would he really move the needle if the Steelers don't get better offensively, getting some weapons out there in Pittsburgh at the wide receiver position? But next player would be Trey Smith, guard for the New England Patriots. Now, Trey Smith going to the New England Patriots, but he was a guard with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Trey Smith got to his first NFL Pro Bowl this year, had a pretty good year on the offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's been a part of those back-to-back Super Bowl championship caliber teams. So at this point, Trey Smith has already won his rings. He's probably looking to cash out and get his bag, and he's probably looking for an affordable or a price tag that is great for him. Now, I don't know if the Kansas City Chiefs is going to be able to afford that price tag that he's going to be asking for. So that's why I feel like he's going to hit the market. And I feel like the New England Patriots are going to capitalize on this because they have over $100 million in cap space to play with this NFL free agency. And they've already stated that their number one priority for the NFL free agency and for the NFL draft is to upgrade the offensive and defensive lines, the trenches of this football team. So what a better way to get NFL free agency started by getting Trey Smith to be protecting Drake May up front, and to get your franchise quarterback some protection, and a new insurance policy in Trey Smith on the offensive line. Now, next is going to be Chris Godwin. I have Chris Godwin going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the fun duo out there in Tampa Bay with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I think it's coming to an end. And it's sad because it was a fun wide receiver duo to watch. They won a Super Bowl together playing alongside Tom Brady. But I think Chris Godwin, his time is up in Tampa. And I think they're going to let him hit the market. Chris Godwin has not been 100% healthy over the last few years. He does have injury history. And he had that nasty ankle injury to close out that game against the Baltimore Ravens earlier on this previous NFL season, which sidelined him for the majority of the season. So I get the injury history makes sense that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't want to re-sign Chris Godwin, or they're letting him hit the market. But I think it could be a good number 2 wide receiver behind George Pickens if healthy. I think he's still a great route runner. I think he can help this Pittsburgh Steelers team offensively. They need some wide receiver help. And if George Pickens can get, if he could get locked in and focused and not act like a diva on the field, this would be a great move for the Pittsburgh Steelers, having him, a veteran player like Chris Godwin, be the number 2 behind George Pickens. Now, next player is Khalil Mack. Now, I think Khalil Mack will re-sign with the Los Angeles Chargers, but I think if he does test the market, he could go to the Detroit Lions. Now, Khalil Mack is 34 years of age, and I think there's going to be a good market set for him based on what he can do. I mean, this season he had 6 sacks, but we're talking about a guy that can still play at an elite level. Speaking of 6 sacks, I think of that 6-sack game that he had in the 2023-24 season when he had 6 sacks against the Las Vegas Raiders, his former team. So I think if Khalil Mack stays with the Chargers, which I think he will re-sign there, there's nothing wrong with that. They're building something special out there in LA with Jim Harbaugh. They over-exceeded their own expectations last year, making the playoffs, even though they got bounced in the first round by the Texans. They still had a pretty surprising season, so I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back there. But playing with the Detroit Lions makes sense as well, because he could play alongside Aiden Hutchinson on that defensive side of the ball. Can you imagine Aiden Hutchinson on one side as a pass rusher when they get him back next year, and Khalil Mack playing on the other side? That's a quarterback's nightmare, an offensive lineman's nightmare, having to block those 2 respective players on the same defensive side of the same defensive line. But I think he would go to the Lions based off them being a championship caliber team. I think that makes sense. But ultimately, I think he will re-sign with the Chargers. If not, I could see him signing with the Lions. Next player is DJ Reed. DJ Reed, cornerback for the New York Jets. He is set to hit the market, and I think he's going to go to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, that dynamic duo, probably the best cornerback duo in the league, of Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, is probably going to come to an end in New York. I think they're going to lose him. And I think DJ Reed is a phenomenal cornerback. Whoever gets him in free agency is going to get one hell of a DB, a defensive back, someone that can really play good in man-to-man coverage or play good in the zone. I think DJ Reed going to the 49ers does make sense because he would be reunited with his former New York Jets head coach, Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh is now going back to San Francisco to be the new defensive coordinator for the team. That's where he was before he became the New York Jets head coach. But I can see him playing in Robert Saleh's defensive scheme once again, and taking Tre'Davious Ward, or not Tre'Davious Ward. I forgot. Oh my gosh, I forgot his name out there in San Francisco. But Ward, he's supposed to hit the free agency market. They're top cornerback, but that would be a good replacement if they get DJ Reed if they lose Ward during NFL free agency. Next player is Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper is going to stay with the Buffalo Bills. Amari Cooper was traded to the Buffalo Bills, coming from the Cleveland Browns to the Buffalo Bills right before the NFL trade deadline. And the connection between Josh Allen and Amari Cooper never really materialized and never really picked up steam as the season went on. Now, I mean, Amari Cooper was there, but the connection that was supposed to pick up, it never did throughout the season. That's nobody's fault. I don't think these two have a problem playing with each other. I think it was just so much going on with Josh Allen being a dynamic dual threat option, also scoring touchdowns with his legs, also running the ball with James Cook and getting the other wide receivers involved in this Buffalo Bills offense. I think that's the reason why it didn't pick up and materialize. But a full offseason and Joe Brady's offense playing alongside, getting a full offseason with Josh Allen, I think that duo would work out there in Buffalo if he were to come back. Amari Cooper is still one of a hell of a player. It still breaks my heart that the Dallas Cowboys gave him up for a bag of a half-open bag of chips to the Cleveland Browns and basically traded one of the best route runners in the league when healthy for a 5th and a 6th round pick. Still mind-boggling that the Cowboys did that. But I think Amari Cooper still has a lot left in the tank. Again, a phenomenal route runner. I think a full offseason with Josh Allen inside Joe Brady's offense, he can thrive and get back to being a good caliber number 2 or number 1 wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. Next, going back to the offensive line, that'd be Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie Stanley, offensive lineman, staying with the Baltimore Ravens. Ronnie Stanley, if you guys have followed his career, he overcame a nasty 2021 ankle injury that really made him consider football and really think about if he could be a big factor on this Baltimore Ravens offensive line. But he played a really big role for this team, and is one of the reasons why this run game was effective this previous season with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, as they were one of the best teams that loved to run the football in the league. I think he's going to get a good contract to stay with the Baltimore Ravens because they're going to need him for next year's season, being a pass protector and being a great run blocker as well. Next player, Stefon Diggs. Now, this is 50-50, but I can see Stefon Diggs going to the Dallas Cowboys this NFL free agency. I think this can't happen because the Cowboys are going to be desperate to get a number 2 wide receiver behind CeeDee Lamb. I think we're going to let Brandon Cooks walk, and I think his time in Dallas is over unless he comes back on a really cheap price. We're not going to overpay for him at this particular point of his career. But CeeDee Lamb, this would make sense because CeeDee Lamb actually just restructured his contract, so that just opened the door for the Cowboys to have $20 more million in cap space to play with this NFL offseason. But Stefon Diggs, coming off a torn ACL, could return back to the Houston Texans because the connection between him and Stroud didn't really have time to materialize because he got hurt earlier on in the season, and that's where all the skilled players for the Texans went down one by one, unfortunately. But it wouldn't surprise me if he came back. But Stefon Diggs in the past has talked highly about Dak Prescott. His brother Trayvon Diggs is already there. I think we could open the checkbook for Stefon Diggs. If he can overcome that ACL injury, get back to being a great, tremendous route runner, I think that could help us offensively putting him at the number 2 wide receiver role behind CeeDee Lamb. And last but not least would be Josh Sweat. I think Josh Sweat is going to leave the Eagles this free agency and go to the New England Patriots. Now, Josh Sweat was a part of that nasty, that filthy defensive pass rush that the Eagles had last year. And that's the reason why, one of the reasons why they went on to win the Super Bowl this year, because that nasty, lethal pass rush, a part of Vic Fangio's defense. So Josh Sweat had a solid year for the Eagles last year. I think he had 6 to 8 sacks. He's probably going to be looking for a big contract this NFL free agency. And if the Eagles are going to pursue Myles Garrett, one of those guys got to go from that rotation, which I think would be Josh Sweat. And a team like the Patriots, I just touched up on, they want to get better on the offensive line and the defensive line. Josh Sweat would be a good fit for this New England Patriots team as they look to get back to their dominant ways of being a dominant defense once again under Mike Vrabel's team this upcoming NFL season. But those are the places I do believe that the top 10 free agents could land. And that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.